And I was just like, oh my gosh, I watched that movie. I can hear marble footsteps. I can smell incense. Like it feels like Catholic home.
Boy, do we have an interesting episode this week. My friend Alex Street joins me for a conversation. He is a liturgical musician as well as a youth minister, and he was working in a Catholic church, and it was going well, and then it wasn't. And this is an episode that kind of details what happened and why. So I think you're going to enjoy this conversation. Excellent. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this because I know you have a busy schedule, a busy life.
Yeah.
And it's not everyone's ideal experience to sit down and talk about faith and about faith practice. So thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it.
And it's also a pleasure to see you. I haven't seen you since I think when you guys came down to LA for to go to Disneyland.
Yeah, I think that was the last time.
I think that was it. It's nice to see you.
You got to see my family in their like craziest
they were great.
Disney adult mode.
They were great. That y'all are real committed to Disneyland.
Mm-hmm.
How many times do you think you've been since then?
Oh, since then? That was the last time I've been to Disneyland in California. We went to Disney World last February, though.
Oh, okay. So,
and that'll take some years off your life.
Undoubtedly. So how are you doing these days post-Easter?
Generally fine, though very busy. We decided to add in a giving campaign to do like a fast giving campaign to help support our food pantry at the church that I work at. And that was decided the Tuesday of Holy Week. So it's just been a lot of things. And that giving campaign actually wraps up today. So
it's been successful?
Yeah. We are right now about a few $100s short of our goal. And I think we'll be able to hit it.
And probably very needed given where we are these days.
It's the demand for that food pantry and for that mission has greatly increased over the last 2 years, and they're seeing a lot of increased demand right now.
Yeah, no, I believe it. So tell me a little bit about yourself. I know some of the pieces of it, but if you could just kind of describe where you're from and how was Catholicism kind of woven into your life?
First of all, I will give the warning for if there's video a part of this podcast, I do tend to like move a lot. That's just the ADHD in me.
That's great.
But yeah, Catholicism, I think some of my earliest memories were from church. I grew up in a family where mom went to church, dad did not go to church. My dad was not raised religious in the slightest. He actually, I think it's a funny story that he's shared with us before that he hasn't been religious since he was 9 years old when his mom dragged him to church and he went to Sunday school. And he hated being there. And then church was right after Sunday school. And he didn't want to stay. He said, I already did an hour of church. Why do I have to do another hour of church? And she basically tried to call his bluff and said, well, unless you want to walk home, you have to stay and go to church. And he called her bluff and walked home. And his dad also wasn't at church. So he walked all the way home. I think he said it was like 2 miles, which is pretty far for a 8-year-old or 9-year-old, whatever he was. And he walked inside the house and his dad, my grandpa, was there watching some NFL game and just sort of was like, oh, how come you're home? And he told him, and that was the last time he was ever required to attend church. And I have a strong suspicion it was last time he attended church until he was married in one many years later. So dad didn't go to church. Religion wasn't ever part of his background. It was a big part of my mom's background. She grew up, she attended Catholic school for a while.
Whereabouts?
I think she went to Catholic high school here in Boise. And it was a pretty big part of her family's life and their spirituality as well. Like they were kind of your very typical, like we're committed to going to church every Sunday and like kind of doing all of the things. I don't want to call them like they were kind of like that checkbox mindset, because I think it meant a lot more to them. And especially my grandma was pretty influential in both my mom's faith life and my faith life. I think it had more meaning than that, but it was like they were going to ensure that their kids went through all of those different things. So they went through First Communion, reconciliation, confirmation, all of that kind of stuff. And then My mom, we did kind of all of the standard stuff up to a certain point, but she got really involved with church through youth ministry
Mm.
and then went on a retreat, an evangelization retreat that was being held at their church. And I think that both her volunteering in youth ministry and that evangelization retreat experience really had an impact on her. And so I think that's where church became a much bigger presence in my life.
How old were
Um,
you when she went through that retreat?
oh, I have no idea.
But
Couldn't tell you.
but
I think
you
maybe
were
like
little.
12.
Oh, okay, about 12. Okay, good. And
Yeah.
was that
Yeah.
Sherry Waddell stuff? That renewal?
I think
Yeah,
so. Yeah.
yeah.
Evangelization. Yeah. She started volunteering in the youth group when I was like 6 or 7 years old, I think. So I was kind of that kid running around the youth group with all the like high school teens and everything. And like, I just thought they were all adults and thought they were like the coolest and like most grown up, and was also super intimidated by them and probably never talked to any of the kids. But it was great for me because there were like all these fun people to be around and fun people to hang out with. And there was a lot of social, like community building among
Mm.
the people who were helping lead that youth ministry. And that's where I think a lot of those adult mentors, like people that I started to look to as I kind of hit that age where I was no longer looking directly to my parents for that
Mm.
modeling, but looking at other people. That's where I think a lot of those relationships were established pretty early on.
That's interesting because I had known that you have done youth ministry, but I didn't know that you kind of grew up in it. That makes sense. And at the same time, were you figuring out how to be a musician, or were you one of those kids who just like wandered over to the guitar and started, or did you have
Oh,
lessons and
no.
then? Oh no, no.
Yeah. No, I wish. I wish I was one of those. I'm very jealous of those people. No, those people tend to have a lot more chill than I do.
Mm.
Um, and they kind of have that like natural grace of like, oh, I'm just good at everything, you
No big
know?
deal.
Yeah. No, I started taking lessons from a friend of ours who was the worship leader for the Life Teen Mass. So
Mm.
like that community, he and his wife at the time became a really big part of my family's community and my community. So I started taking lessons from him when I was, I think, 11, maybe 12.
Guitar,
Yeah, guitar
guitar. Yeah.
lessons. And I started learning quite a bit. I wasn't ever super motivated. Yeah, I did that for about 2, maybe 3 years, and then just kind of naturally was like, I wasn't practicing, I wasn't really progressing. So it's kind of that typical thing, you know. My journey with music, I think, was I always thought that the music at that mass was great and was beautiful and was interesting and it was very different than the traditional stuff I had grown up with.
And
In
it was more praise and worship.
Yeah,
Yeah.
more praise and worship oriented, though it was like, the 90s and 2000s. So it was, yes, Lord, and all that kind of fun stuff. But yeah, I always thought that music was great, and it appealed to me so much more than the stuff that I had heard growing up, which is funny because now, like, as I look back on it, the stuff that I grew up with is way more appealing to me than some of the praise and worship stuff I
Mm.
heard at the time.
What are some of the songs that have come around again for you?
First of all, almost all of the St. Louis Jesuit songs, those are hits. You cannot go wrong with a good St. Louis Jesuit song.
I beg
So,
to
like,
differ. You
oh no,
the 400th
I believe it.
time you think, I don't know.
That's fair. That's fair. See, I don't ever have to hear them at that frequency, but like, "Here I Am, Lord" is a hit. Everyone loves it. The Protestants love it. Everyone loves that song. Um, Take Me As I Am. I think, yeah. Anyway, I can't remember the names of the authors, but like some of those songs,
Mm.
those are great, and I find them at this stage in my life a lot more to have a lot more depth
Mm.
than maybe even I expected.
Interesting.
And I have started to find a lot of the praise and worship songs. I think I'm kind of in this journey now where I'm doing a lot more digging to find the praise and worship songs that have more substance to them because I realize how void of substance a lot of them were. And I'm not
Mm.
going to call those ones out publicly.
No, I get it. Because a lot of those are very, I like a good banger, a good anthem, and it's just very like the last one I heard, and that's good too.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And they don't, a lot of them just don't say much. And I think there are times where our faith is at a place where we don't need much, where
Mm.
we don't need a really deep song that you can really sit back and reflect on, because sometimes our faith is in a pretty fragile place and a simple message can be the best message.
Mm. Mhm.
But there's a difference between writing a simplistic song and writing 100 simplistic songs.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I've seen a lot of the industry moving in that direction. And as a worship leader at church, it can be very frustrating because I'm like, I'm just trying to find a song that is going to like have some degree of meaning for people.
Yeah.
And it can be harder to find than you'd expect.
Yeah. And so you were raised up in that. Your mother was doing youth ministry. This musical strand started as well, and you kind of just continued on being a Catholic. And was that driven by your family? Because you did it as a family.
No, I think I really took it up for
Mm.
myself at some point and kind of started driving it on my own. And the more I look back and I reflect on it, like I think it's for a lot of different reasons. And the easiest way from that makes sense to me to summarize why would be to say I am an Enneagram 3. And if that doesn't make sense to people, that's okay because I'll share more. But if that does, then the people listening right now can probably just skip ahead because it'll make perfect sense to them. They're like, I don't even have to hear the story. But
What
it sort of is that thing that you kind of become this person who learns to disguise yourself and learns an adaptability muscle. You walk into any room and you can kind of quickly read the room and become the person that you need to be for that room.
that
But it's
you
not self-serving.
that you need to be, or that you intuit the room needs you to be?
A little bit of both, I
Mm-hmm.
think. And I'm not the expert
Hmm.
on all of that stuff. I'd say for me, it's a little bit of both. Um, but I think it starts as a way of keeping others at bay.
Mm-hmm.
There's like that fear of being the authentic self, meaning that like people are going to see a version of you that they don't like.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also a lot of this understanding that I have always been this way, but like I derive my worth out of what I can do for people and out of what I can produce. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not self sacrificial necessarily for the Enneagram nerds listening. That's more of an Enneagram too, but it's not self sacrificial really, but it's more about finding my value in what I do rather
Mm-hmm.
than finding my value in who I am. If
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense.
Yeah. And so when I knew you, I knew you at Boise State. You were doing a lot of your own music, but a lot of music on your own, as well as
Yeah,
with your own group or band. Would you call that you had a
yeah,
band? Would you say?
yeah.
And so you would end up doing a lot of that everywhere, and that's part and parcel of that same impulse.
I think what drew me to music so much was there was a couple of things. One, it was about sort of I felt like I was this person who'd never deeply felt like I fit in. And so I was like searching for something to help find connection with other people. And music definitely made me
Mm.
feel valued by others. And then that value sort of led to this a twisted sense of like, oh, well, if others value me for this thing that I can do, then they value me as a person, right?
Mm. Mhm.
And rather than just kind of that intrinsic knowing that like I am valuable as a person as I am. I don't need to do anything to be valuable as a person, but that was kind of where I was at that time.
Have you
And
read any movie star biopics? I mean, have you
yeah,
watched any of them? This is the story, like, right?
yeah. Well, most movie stars are Enneagram threes. So
Mm,
just
mhm.
throwing this, my mom's going to be so proud. I resisted learning anything about Enneagrams for so long. And then she finally got me to do it. And now it's like it's changed my whole perspective on myself and other people. And I don't know what level of like how pleased she feels with herself about that, but it must just bring her a lot of joy because she used to like bring up the topic of Enneagram stuff. And I would just roll my eyes like, oh, God, we're going at this again. And
Why not just put a bone through your nose and jump around a
yeah,
cauldron? That's ridiculous. Yeah.
exactly. What is this cult stuff you're talking to me about? Like, I don't know. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, movie stars, performers, people who are drawn to performance tend to be in kind of that same category. And I think it's that thing of you feel like something about you is inherently unworthy. And so you are searching for a way to produce worth so
Mm,
that others
mhm.
will find you worthy.
Yeah.
So for me, music was about that. It was about being able to do something that people valued and hoping that that value meant that they valued me as a
Yeah.
person. But then it also was this weird, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, like being a person with ADHD, uh, music was this thing that was able to take over the noisy parts of my brain enough that it was typically like one of the only times that I would feel really like content or like at peace.
Interesting.
And that was like more, that was the thing that was like there for me. It was something about the combination of singing while reading words on a page or trying to remember words to a song and playing a guitar or playing a piano. Something about that combination took all of the like super anxiety ridden or distractible parts of my brain and sort of like overtook those pieces and
Mhm.
left like kind of like that deeper person. Like it kind of made that like who I am feel a little more accessible, which was sometimes terrifying because then it made me have to confront like the truth of who I was, the authenticity. But then sometimes it was great because it was like, oh, I forgot that person was in there. Like,
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
hey again.
Yeah. How did all this affect your relationship with, actually with God? How did this lay on top of that as far as, like, trying to create value for the other person in the relationship, and in this case, God? How did that all work for you?
I mean, I think it led to that very typical experience of like, I have to work to earn God's favor.
Mm.
Like I don't um have much worth outside of what I can do for God. Um and I think that it's great to work on God's behalf.
Mm, mhm.
Um but not if you're doing it because you think you have no
In
intrinsic worth,
Yeah.
you know?
Mhm.
And so I think it kinda led through a lot of, like this is a lot of people's stories, but it's like the teen years, you're doing everything you can to as a faithful person in the teen years, you're thinking, "Okay, I have to do all the right things. This is what they've told me are the right things, so I have to do all the right things." And then, young adulthood, it sort of starts to get really messy because there's all these mixed messages about who you are and what you're supposed to be, and, just kinda trying to, like, find myself through all of that was
Mhm.
pretty challenging. Um, the thing that was the most difficult for me, I would say, though, wasn't the doing things for other people. I mean, I was really rehearsed at it, and I found worth in it, but I also found some joy in it. The thing that was hard for me was, like, the messages about what it meant to be a good follower of Christ or, like, a good Catholic, and, like, it was always there was so much pressure around, "This is what your prayer life needs to look like."
Mm, mm, mhm.
And I look back on it now with the wisdom of the person that I am and the things that I've discovered about myself, and I see that it's like, yeah, I was trying to force myself into a box that was never going to work for me. But I
Mm.
felt so much guilt about it, especially because, as you alluded to, like I found myself in leadership positions running youth ministries. And I remember there were so many times where I would go home from running a youth group night and just feel like the worst fraud because here I was standing in front of these teenagers telling them that they needed to have this prayer life. And then I was like, I don't have that prayer life.
Mm,
And it was
mhm.
like, there was all this like pressure to do, you know, oh, we're doing this novena for blah, 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 blah
Mhm.
thing. Or, oh, join our club that prays the rosary at whatever time per day. Or, oh, do you want to join us in this, prayer thing that we're doing during the month of Lent? I mean, during the season of Lent, or do you want to join us for, it was like always this stuff. And it was just like, God, no, I don't want to do any of that. None of that speaks to me as a person. It actually all makes me feel crazy. Like, by the time I've said the fifth Hail Mary in a rosary, like I am dying. My brain is so ready to move on. Now, I do know that probably the great contemplatives of the church would say that you have to like build that muscle and like get to a place where you can let some of that go.
Sure.
I'm not always the best at letting things go.
In all
But as
honesty.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But as your colleague, Father Tree, likes to say, or co-opted from somebody else, who knows,
Sure.
that you need to. I think he said, "Don't should on yourself,"
Mm, mhm.
and I was just shooting on myself constantly.
Yeah. No, that's very easy to do. So
Mhm.
you did all that youth ministry stuff, and you had the music thing going on, and sometimes you had a band, sometimes you didn't. Sometimes you're doing all that, and then you graduate from college, and then you take a more full time job in youth ministry at a parish. Is that correct?
Yeah, so this was in the era of I was going to college during the era of Obamacare, which was wonderful because I was able to stay on my parents' health insurance
Ah, the good old days.
up to a point, and then
Up
I couldn't anymore.
because
And
you were over 26.
yep, I was about to turn 26, and so I remember going to the pastor of the church that was my home church, and saying, you know, "I need to be able to keep working here, I need a full-time job." And, uh, the pastor who was there was not the one that I had grown up with, and we had a tense relationship at times. I think he was looking to, like, make some changes. I had been there a long time, and so he was just like, "Well, we're not in a position to offer you a full-time position." And then a full-time position really just kind of fell into my lap from another local church. A good friend of mine, recommended me for it and went through that process and started working full-time as a director of middle school ministry at a local Catholic church.
Hmm,
And yeah, so started doing that. That was my first like full-time ministry gig. I had done a lot of part-time youth ministry or maybe full-time youth ministry being compensated part-time.
sure. Yeah. More
And I had
options.
done a lot of traveling and like kind of building up to a point where I was like leading worship at a lot of retreats, conferences, events, camps, or helping facilitate a lot of retreats, conferences, and camps and that kind of thing. But then stepped into that full-time position.
Yeah. And how'd that go?
It was great for a while. um, it was a really good experience. Honestly, it was one of the better experiences that I could have asked for my faith. It really kind of allowed me to step into my own, kind of step out of the shadow of the kid I was and the teenager that I was,
Mhm.
and become my own person. Um, the clergy that I was working with at that church were amazing, and I they had some really unique and different perspectives, and kind of ca- taught me a lot of different things that I really needed to hear, like things that I needed to become better. I think challenged me in areas where I needed to become better at my job, and then also helped me to find a little bit more peace within myself
Mm.
in the person that I was already.
Yeah. That sounds like a big gift,
Yeah,
to have that going on. Yeah. Nice.
yeah.
And how long were you in that job?
2017 until 2022, so
Hmm,
a little
okay.
over 5 years,
Oh,
or yeah, around there.
yeah, that's quite a while. Nice.
Yeah,
And then did staff change, or you change, or what happened?
yeah. I mean both, but predominantly the breaking point of that experience was a just a clergy change. Catholic priests like to move around,
They
or
they
actually, I don't know.
they don't like it, but
Yeah, I don't know if they like it,
the
but
bishops
they
do.
do move
Yeah.
around. And so the pastor who had hired me at that church moved to take a different position, different part of the state, and a new pastor came in, and for a while that was fine.
Mm,
But then my time with that previous pastor really coincided with a lot of like personal development for me, and it was to like really get into it. Like I knew that there was something different about me my whole life,
mhm.
but like had really started to like work through that. Um, and like I had always been struggling with my sexuality and understanding what that was and how that related to me.
Mhm.
And I think that those years really marked a turning point where I no longer felt so much shame about who I was. And I was really starting to reach an acceptance of like, okay, this is who I am. This is who I am. That is okay. And I am still loved by and like matter to God.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, and then there's the external forces, the Pope also says that I am loved by the church and welcomed by the church. And so I was not like, I was processing through all of that stuff. I wasn't out to anybody at that church. I was hardly out to anybody in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I was processing through kind of all of those different pieces and trying to um, kind of find what I wanted to do for my future. It's we can't take anything back about what happened in the world, but I had reached a point in 2019 where I was very sure. I was like, okay, I think I need to move on. Like I need to find something different. It's time to move on. I need to be preparing to make that step because I was like, I know that I'm not someone who is called to like a vocation of holy orders. Like I am not being, because for years for gay men, like the Catholic Church's response is, you know, be a celibate single person, go to seminary, although don't tell anybody about it.
And since you're celibate,
Yeah, yeah. And since you're celibate, why not try
why?
seminary?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I knew that I had always known that that wasn't the call for me, and I'm really glad that I always knew that
Good for you.
because I think if I had gone in that direction, knowing how I am when I'm repressing parts of myself, I think I could have caused a lot of damage to myself and other people in that process.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but so I'm glad that I never did that. But I knew that I wanted more. Like I wanted to be able to be the person that I felt like I was. So in 2019, I kind of start mentally like planning, okay, I'm gonna start taking some steps and like start figuring some things out. And then March of 2020 hits. And it's like at that point, I'm just deeply grateful to even have a job.
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
not a good time to go looking for a new job. And there were all these youth and parents and families that I had built relationships with over the last few years that I was like, well, this is kind of a time of need for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to leave them in that time of need. And I also don't want to leave my community where I am finding a lot of
Mm-hmm.
support during this time because I think like yeah, I think 2020 or 2021 would have been a tough time
Yeah.
to make that transition.
Yeah. So you thought, well, I'll just hunker down here. What were the other possibilities that were in your mind about like moving on to what? Another degree, another city,
Yeah, I don't know.
buying
I
a
don't know what
dog. What is it? Yeah.
yeah, well, I have the dog now, so I guess I just
What
have
kind of
to,
dog do you have?
she's a like mix of different herding dogs.
Oh, nice.
She's great. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think that's the problem is that I hadn't gotten very far with it. I
Hmm.
think I hadn't figured out what that was. I know there was kind of a job at a Catholic church that I was being kind of what's the word? I don't know.
Courted.
Uh, yeah, sure, courted. There's a job at another Catholic church that I was being courted for that I really was excited about, but also hesitant about. And I remember the big reason why I ended up saying no to them was I was like, I feel like if I go and do this job, I would need to like I'd be moving across the country and I would need to stay there for a minimum of 3 years to really like give it my all. And I think at that time I was just like, I don't want to do that. Like I don't want to wait 3 more years
Hmm.
to be the person that I am.
And so, and when you say that, you couldn't imagine like taking, for instance, that job that you spoke of, and remaining closeted. You were like,
Yeah.
I can't. That's not what I can do. Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
you thought, well, I need to do the coming out thing, and then figure out what's beyond that.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. How did that go?
um well, so I never officially like came out to the like community that I was in, but what happened was on June 1st, 2022, I think I had just deconstructed enough resistance and had read enough things by a lot of different people, but pretty specifically Father James Martin. So this is his fault.
You
Um,
you hear that, Jim? Thanks.
yeah, his fault. Um, And so I think I had just gotten to a point where I was feeling comfortable with myself and comfortable in my identity as a Catholic. And so I June 1st hits, I just it's just social media, no big deal. Personal, private social media, and I just shared some stuff that was like, this is why, like, it's June 1st, happy Pride Month. This is why this matters to me. And specifically, the thing that I said was quoting the statistics we hear about youth mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all very much done through the lens of like supporting young people and
Mm-hmm.
becoming like making sure that we are a safe space as a church for young people to be their authentic selves. And that didn't go so great for me. So I don't know if I would say that the church is the safe that church at least was a safe space for young people to authentically be themselves. I think a lot of them knew they could authentically be themselves with me. Um, but I remember I got a phone call that night from the pastor of the church that I ignored because I was like, I don't know what you're calling, and I'm not answering that phone call tonight. And then I went in the next day, and he was so angry with me for not answering his call, which in my defense, I was like, this is outside my office hours. You want me to answer my phone when you call? Like, you don't own my life. But he was so angry with me. And the long story short version of it was a parent had seen it and expressed her concern to another parent. And that parent was, oh, well, I'm very, very close to father. Let me bring it to his attention. And so goes from one parent to the next parent who thinks she's father's special friend. And then father sees it, gets really pissed off, calls me. I don't answer. And so then I think at that point he had decided that he didn't want me to work there anymore. But we sort of played out we had this weird meeting where I think he wanted me to come in and just be deeply contrite. I'm so sorry. I should have never done that. You're right. Even even promoting a modicum of acceptance means that we are going against the church, blah, 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 all this stuff. And we had this meeting and I wasn't. I went in and I said, no, like trust me, like I know what the church teaches about this stuff and I know what the church says. And I was like, I'm not promoting anything that goes against church teaching. All I am doing is saying that people who identify this way are important and they matter to God, and we want to make sure that they know they have a place in this church. And that message was not well received.
Yeah, wow. Even within your job of caring for young people is what you're being paid to do. And when you do that, this is the result. That's
Yeah.
terrible. Yeah.
There was a very strong belief that any imagery that included a rainbow um, was promoting the idea of same-sex marriage, which is against church teaching. And I was like, I don't think that's true in the slightest, but if that's how you want to read it, I guess we're gonna have to agree to disagree. And I don't think he was very happy with the agree to disagree response.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, how long did you last after that? Was he like, clean out your office, get out?
No, I we had that meeting and I think my stance maybe took him back, or he just expected, or maybe he didn't know what he wanted to do. I
Hmm.
couldn't
Yeah.
tell you.
Yeah.
He was new to being a pastor, still relatively junior in being a pastor. And I don't think he really knew what he was doing. So we had that meeting and I was like, well, I'm going out of town for the next 3 weeks because I was leading worship at a summer camp uh, away from the church. Then I was coming back, directing a summer camp for the middle schoolers from that church, and then going again to lead worship at another summer camp. Um, so I was like, well, I'm going to be gone for 3 weeks. So I don't know what you want to do. But you figure it out. And so I left and came back, and he had requested another meeting with me. And we had another meeting. His stance was, are you sorry for what you said? And I was like, no, like not in the slightest. I even walked into that. If it was the first time in my life, I felt like a lawyer. I walked into that meeting with like printouts of the catechism and what Pope Francis has recently said, and here are these things, and here are these things. Like I was like, nope, I'm not sorry in the slightest. And then that was when he was like, okay, well then you will no longer be employed here as of then. But it was so weird because it was, you will no longer be employed here as of the end of August. And this was a meeting happening in like the 1st of July. And I was like, that's weird. What am I supposed to do with that? So it was a complicated process. I ended up working until the end of the month of July. It was a combination of trauma and just like uh doing my best not to let it feel like moving around deck chairs on the Titanic, like
Mm-hmm.
because those kids really mattered to me. So I didn't want
Sure.
to like get angry and just not do anything for
Yeah.
them.
No,
So
that's important.
kind of followed through with some of the programming commitments I had made, and then by the end of July, walked away.
Mm. So you walked away. And did you walk away from that church or the church at that point?
I think at that point I would have just said that church, and specifically that pastor's toxic leadership style.
Mm.
The problem was I realized in that process that no one was going to help me or back me up or come to my defense in any way, shape, or form. Like I reached out to some of the clergy who are higher up in the diocese who I had known for over a decade, like worked closely alongside, um, and just got, I remember with one person, their response was, I was pretty frustrated and upset and called them and explained the situation that had just happened. And that I was being let go from this position. And his response at the end of all of it was he said, I'm just listening and I'm praying for you. And I was like, all right. Yeah. I was like, that sucks. That's some really crap. I was like, number one, you are in a position to do something.
Yeah.
And I was like, don't get me wrong, prayer is great, but it just felt very thoughts and prayers,
Very thoughts and prayers. Yeah.
And yeah. And so that just really pissed me off. And that's where I realized that the local church, even though I had spent years trying to be, that very, giving so much of myself to the local church, not
Mm-hmm.
just the parishes I worked at, but the community, um, that it didn't matter. I mean, for me, my experience was the minute that it's a lay person's word versus the word of a clergy person, you don't matter in the slightest. The
Yeah.
wagons will be circled around the clergy person.
Yeah. Ugh. That that is an awful story, and I think too common because
Yeah.
people, yeah, because that's exactly right. And so, you would you say would you consider yourself a practicing Catholic now?
Um, I knew you were going to ask that question.
Well, it is a podcast about Catholic practice.
Yeah. I don't know. I have a lot of answers that I've been workshopping, but the truest answer is I don't know. Sometimes I go through the feeling of I'm a Catholic. I dedicated my life to my faith. I have gone through like every meaningful, important step of that the Catholic Church has for people to go through outside of, you know, getting married or taking a vow of holy orders or dying, I guess. Um, and so like for a long time, my answer was like, you can't take my Catholic identity away from
Mhm.
me.
Mhm.
And, we're recording this after uh, Pope Francis has passed. And uh, that's been kind of interesting because it's like looking at all of that and then like the speculation of who's going to be next and all of that, like all right back. I'm like, oh, I am as Catholic as they come. Let me tell you, I know all the details. I am in on, like, I want to have a March Madness list that like
The
helps
bracket.
us narrow down like papal candidates. Um, like I'm all in on that stuff. But yeah, for a while, my flippant answer that I thought was kind of fun was that I was Catholic east of the Mississippi and I was uh, Methodist west of the Mississippi. Um, I can get into the regionalities of that later, but Yeah, I think right now the best answer is just I don't know. I don't feel comfortable going to any of the local Catholic parishes where I live. Um,
Because it's too small a
I,
community and they know what happened?
yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's fine. I don't care about that. I don't care that people know what happened. I have had it reported back to me too many times that um, that certain clergy have made comments about like, oh, if he, okay, the church that I used to serve at, I went back and played for a funeral and had been assigned to do it and just was like, whatever, I'll do it. And it was pretty new into that whole situation. And I found out afterwards that the pastor of that church had told uh, someone who was helping with communion, if he comes up to you to receive communion, deny it to him. And I was asked to play for a wedding last year and was on board to play for the wedding. And then in the last week before that wedding was set to take place, found out that there was all this drama that was happening that I happily wasn't connected to.
Mm-hmm.
All this stuff happening behind the scenes where the pastor of the church where I was playing was trying to say like, oh, we have a rule here that that person, that Alex Street cannot play at this church. And some people, so I think the family scrambled, tried to find another musician, called someone who's a friend of mine. That friend was like, that's not right. Got some people involved at the diocesan level. And so then I was cleared to play for weddings, which I was just like, man, that's a low bar and the money is not worth it in the end. It's
Too
like,
late. Yeah.
yeah. I was just like, well, I don't, it sounds like you don't actually have a rule. I mean, I still played for the wedding because I didn't want to like mess up the family.
Mm.
But I think it was like, well, it turns out you don't have a rule that I can't play there, but I think I have a new rule that I won't play there.
Yeah. Wow.
So
And so you're not going to mass, you're not receiving Eucharist within a Catholic setting. That's not what you're doing at the moment.
yeah, not locally. No, I
Yeah.
just don't feel comfortable. I feel like there's been too many things that have happened that make me feel that I will be very likely like singled out or like
Yeah.
ostracized in some way if I tried. And I also uh I work in a Methodist church now and I think it has really opened me up to the fact that it's like regardless of anything, like God is present everywhere.
Hmm.
And this might be very unexpected for Catholics to hear, but like God's even present in Protestant churches. And so
All
um
right. They need to clear that with us before that happens. I think there needs to be a vote or something.
yeah, you'd like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, if I'm a Catholic waiting around for a vote, I might
Yeah.
be waiting a long time. Uh, yeah, that seems so difficult that the church is standing between you and what's possible in the church. So crazy.
Yeah. So I mean when I travel, my family lives on the West Coast and they're active and involved in their Catholic church. And um, I'm when I travel and go see them, like I'm open to going to their church and I'm open to going to churches in other places. My joke that I make about east of the Mississippi is just that like there seem to be a lot more um, authentically welcoming bishops on the eastern half of this country than
Hmm.
maybe I would say on the western half. And I don't really know, and I'm a little out of the game as far as who's who and who's where in the Catholic Church of the US. But just I've always found a lot of hope and inspiration from like the things that like I'll hear Cardinal Supich say out of
Hmm.
Chicago,
Yeah.
or
Right.
that I'll hear coming out of like the Boston Archdiocese and um, even in New York. And so I think I would feel very comfortable. Like if I think my life would have taken a very different story if I had grown up in any of those places. And I think my involvement in the church would have taken a very different path if I had
Yeah.
grown up in any of those places.
Well.
But growing up in a very conservative space
Right.
where I did not know at the time, but I now realize that I'm like, oh, it's really the conservatism of the place that is defining the conservatism of the church
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that I think, yeah.
Yeah.
it has led to it it led to a much narrower perspective of what a quote unquote good Catholic could be.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about, uh, and maybe this is kind of guessing on your part, but if you had continued in the church and been able to, be fully yourself, uh, uh, and have that be accepted by the folks around you, would you still continue in the church as a gay person, knowing that you can't get married in the church, and that there's these situations that are kind of just in the books at the moment, no matter how welcoming a community is? Would you eventually, do you think, I would have always stepped away at some point and just gotten on with my
Yeah.
life somewhere else?
Yeah, I think, or 3 or 4 years ago, uh, I would have said, "Oh, if I could find an open and accepting Catholic community where I can be the person that I am and
Hmm.
be accepted as that, that's enough. That's all
Yeah,
I need."
sure.
Um, Having worked in a fully accepting and fully affirming, uh, denominational setting for the last, 2.5 years now, or nearly 3 years now, I don't know if that would feel like enough anymore,
Mm,
you know?
hmm.
And especially because working at a church, so much of my community and my relationship was built around that church. I think we make it very hard for anybody who works at a church to have a life outside of that church. And so to have something like a relationship where you really, for me to have something like a relationship where I really want that to be able to be celebrated by the community that matters to me and not have that be an option, I think that would have always felt very limiting.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have felt very hard to like process. And I think that would have eventually become the thing that made me feel very like, okay, well, at a certain point, I feel kind of like the lesser person in this church.
Hmm. Yeah. No matter how welcoming this particular parish is. Yeah.
Yeah, and well, and that's the thing is that I was in a very welcoming setting until I wasn't.
Hmm.
And I interviewed for a job outside of this diocese over on the West Coast after all of this happened and was offered that position, was really discerning that position. There were a lot of layers to that discernment, but a big part of it was, you know, okay, the pastor knows who I am. The pastor has other people on his staff who are uh, who are openly gay or um, yeah, and uh, and they're still offering me this job and they want me to be involved and they value my experience and
Hmm.
but in the end it was just like, yeah, but that pastor gets moved. Where's that
Yeah.
job go? Or the bishop in that area couldn't be worse. But like, the bishop decides to crack down on it all of a sudden and make life a lot more miserable for his pastors. And I was like, I feel like I'm still opening myself up to get caught in the crosshairs of a really crappy situation that, not all employment situations are wonderful. There's
Mm.
not every I don't love every aspect about my current job, but I do know that I will never be dismissed or told to hide who I am um, for that reason in this
Yeah.
position. And that if I did choose to get married or something like that, that would be celebrated and embraced by this
Yeah.
community and wouldn't be um, in most Catholic communities.
Yeah. And it's a very different situation. Uh, just knowing that that possibility is open, whether
Mhm.
you're in a relationship, whether you're engaged, whether you're getting married or whatever, it's a different feeling when you know that, well, yeah, those opportunities are there. It's very different. What is your job right now at the Methodist Church?
Yeah. So doing I work as a worship leader. We have it's a church with multiple locations because Protestants love that.
Sure.
Um, and so I work at one of our locations as our director of worship, and then I run social media and marketing for our church as well.
So you got all these gifts and you're actually able to give them all.
Not all of them, but most
some
of
some
them.
I won't. Is
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Oh, yeah.
in addition to the stance on having employees that are fully themselves? Uh, what else are you finding in the denomination where you're working that you wish the Catholics would do, or what are the things you miss?
The things that I miss are a lot of just the things that feel familiar. Um, so even I was describing the feeling of watching the movie Conclave to somebody, which great movie. I hope you've seen it.
I have.
Okay. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I watched that movie. I can hear marble footsteps. I can smell incense. Like it feels like Catholic home, you know? And so I think there's a lot of the I miss, like going through a Holy Week experience in this church, which does observe a lot of the movements of Holy Week, but observes them very differently than the Catholic Church does.
Mhm.
Um, it's new, and that's great. Like I'm open to the new things, but there is a part of my heart that is often like missing um, that experience of the familiar.
Yeah. No, that's it. How's the preaching, hospitality? How's all
Great.
that? Yeah, good.
Yeah, I have learned that the average the average sermon in a Protestant church is much longer than the average homily in a Catholic church.
Much.
That was the toughest thing to adjust to once I got this job. And when I took the job, I was still very much in that like, hey, I don't know what I consider myself. I don't know if I'm going to say that I'm, you know, like I was like, I'm not going to identify as, you know, Protestant or Methodist or Christian or whatever. Like, I still in my mind I am Catholic, but I also am a Catholic that needs a job. So I was like, I'm gonna go work at this church and take this job. And that was the thing that was the biggest adjustment. I was just like, wow, these sermons are long. Like, okay, 20, 25, sometimes 30 minutes. Like, whoo, okay, let's get to the point. I became the person that would walk the halls and would try to find the statistic, um, a reason to slip in the statistic in the conversation about like, well, they say the average adult attention span is about 7 minutes. And
You know, mm,
I don't think people love that.
no.
Um, but I think I've come around to the fact that like preaching has a very different, um, there's a very different style and it has a different place of importance.
Yeah,
The church that I go to, they still participate in communion, but it's a very different understanding than the
sure.
Catholic understanding of Eucharist. And that sometimes can be challenging, but also one of the most beautiful things that I was able to become accustomed to was kind of the preamble that goes into communion whenever we do that at the church that I work at. And whoever is preaching, there's always some version of something said that is all are welcome at this table, no matter who you are. This isn't my table. This isn't the church's table. This is God's table, and everyone is welcome at God's table. And I don't think it struck me until I then went back to a Catholic church for another funeral, and the priest gets up and gives the preamble, and it's if you are not a and it was a pretty stern preamble. If you are not a regularly practicing Catholic that has gone to confession in the last blah blah blah, then we invite you to come receive a blessing, but you are not welcome to receive communion. And I was just like, wow, that is a difference
That is a
right
difference.
there.
Yeah.
Like the fact that we're saying like I just think that I respect and I love the Eucharist in the Catholic Church. And I understand why we treat it with the
Mhm.
reverence and care that we do. However, I think sometimes we do that at the expense of, the thing that Francis said, which is communion, Eucharist is meant to be the medicine for the sick, not not the
Uh,
prize for the
the pure. Yeah.
pure. Yeah.
Yeah. Very much. How great to spend time with you.
Yeah. It
And
was great to be able to have this conversation with you.
and to hear how things have been going since I last knew where you were and what you were up to. So thank you, and thank
Yeah.
you for being part of this topic as well. This is great.
Yeah.
It's
Of
good.
course.
And
Um,
please give my
I
best
was
to
going
your
to say,
family. Please give my best to your family.
of course.
Yes, I just love seeing them.
If you ever want to chat again, let me know.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to Catholics in Ordinary Time. If you like what you're hearing, please consider subscribing so you don't miss anything in the rest of the season. Also, please recommend this to friends and family. And if you're feeling up to it, please leave us a review. That makes all the difference. Again, thanks so much for listening.